1:30, meeting of the Community Services Committee. Item 1, apology.
Apologies received, Chair, from Councillor Weaver and from Councillor Lineker and Councillor Cooley substituting for Councillor Lineker.
Thank you very much. Any declarations of interest? Matters on the agenda? No?
Sure.
Chairman's report and urgent items. I don't have any. Do we have any urgent items?
No, Chair.
Thank you. Any public questions in accordance with Standing Order 22? None received?
None received, Chair.
Have there any ever been received?
We did have one, yes, from a former councillor.
Okay. Long time ago.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. Right, minutes. Minutes have been previously circulated at our meeting on the 17th of May. Can I sign those as true record? Yep.
On the 3.1 Chairman's report and urgent items,
yep.
I've got one location of building regards to it being within a food zone.
Right, thank you.
Yeah, good spot.
And also, could I just ask on the minutes 5.4, page 2, just a clarification we thought about the storage container. That would be provided to this meeting, but I couldn't see it in the agenda.
It's on the
coming up.
forward
That
track.
is coming up.
It's on the action track.
Okay. Other than that, that's more than a minute. If that's okay. Minutes okay? Acceptable. Thank you.
Could you just initiate on Friday?
Okay, so we'll move on to the action tracker on page 7. Screens. The container update. Could you just give us a...
Yes, so we need to liaise with the Environment Agency regarding the location of putting the storage container actually in the area where the new build is going to be. We've got the flood risk assessment sorted out for the actual building itself, but the Environment Agency need to see the plans for the location of where the storage container will go. So that's still an ongoing matter.
Well, we were thinking of keeping it for ourselves, weren't we?
We were thinking of keeping it ourselves, but I think probably with some of the items that are on the agenda further under exempt business,
Okay.
I think that may be not surplus requirements. We could always use additional storage, but if the volunteers could use it.
We'll take that under. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, well, I think that the real reason I queried it previously was obviously the reason for building a new headquarters was actually for, the prime reason was the storage facility. So it seems strange that the Town Council providing a new unit, but without the storage facility, so they also need a container. So I thought that was sort of my query that we were going to look into and find out why there isn't enough storage facility in the building itself, that they would need another container that was going to be used somewhere else.
Okay.
Kind of defeats the object of spending a fortune on a new headquarters. So.
Okay, perhaps we can look at that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Right, drilling new boreholes at Fatford, do we have any updates on that?
Yes, Chair, we've been granted provisional extraction licence with certain conditions which need to be further explored. So a report for drilling new boreholes will be submitted to this committee on the 20th of September.
Okay.
on a separate matter. Shall I say that
Yep,
something?
yep.
So Thames Water were imposed with a fine for a sewage leak further up the River Lee about 2 years ago, and a fine. They paid the fine, and the Herts and Middlesex Wildlife Trust has been awarded a sum of money for works to be undertaken to mitigate the damage that was happened whilst the flooding, whilst the risk, the sewage was leaking into the river. So Battersea Springs has been allocated £20,000, some of which would be used for the borehole filling.
Is that can Okay. Any signage at Battersea Springs? Do we have any updates on that?
The officer in charge of that, the People Wildlife Officer, will be meeting with volunteers to discuss the information required on the signs and where they'd like to have them put.
Okay. Any comments on that? Okay, and the water safety review, we've got that later.
I think it's all good to hear about progress on each of these things. I welcome it. I'd just like to make the observation that if we're going to have this tracker, it would be good to have the status and completion target by each item, even if it's a target, it's not a set in stone date. And I think that's good because it helps councillors keep members of the public informed, and I think it keeps minds focused in the town hall as to what priorities are.
Right, any forward planner? The change we've got now for volunteering policy, but that's been dealt with, hasn't it?
No, that will have to come to another meeting.
Okay.
Members wanted a light touch policy.
Okay. That's what I'm coming on that then. Okay. Any comments on the forward plan? Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, let's move on to our first report. Non-native invasive species and harmful weeds policy. I think we're under a duty of care, aren't we, as is stated in here, that under 3.10 to prevent invasive non-native plants on our land from spreading and causing a nuisance, and to take specific steps to control such species. I think the report's fairly explanatory. We've got a map of where some of these things are on page 17. I've got it. And on page 18 for Battersea Springs. Any comments on this?
One small question. On the page 13, the financial implications, just to clarify, it's got the cost of the annual cheque in 2017 and 18, £1,000 plus VAT. Is that for the 2 years added together?
Yes.
Also, just thinking about it, season 3, the chemical treatment is £485 plus VAT. Does seem strange, unusually high, that the cheque costs more than doing the chemical treatment itself.
I could get some information.
Because obviously the main, the bulk of work is actually the physical aspect of spraying weed killer and the chemical itself. So to come back and then check whether it's still there or not. So it just seems right.
Well,
if I'm reading that right.
Well, I suppose the checking, you've got to check all over the place.
Yeah. If it's just spraying, you do as well.
But you only spray the invasive weeds when you found them, don't you?
I can't see that that's any less time consuming than going back and having a look for them and not having to spray them.
Especially if you look for them and find that some of them are going to spray them anyway.
Yeah.
I can't.
What you can look and spray at the same time, I think.
I'm just saying.
Like combined.
It's unlikely that they're going to go to a field and spray a whole field, wholesale, and that's really quick and easy. They're not checking; they're just doing a whole field. They will be looking for the Japanese knotweed and only spraying Japanese knotweed, I imagine they're not going to be doing huge fields of it.
Wouldn't be appropriate to spray fields, I would have thought.
Do you understand what I mean though, is that in itself is, they have to look for it in the first place to find it and then treat it with chemicals. I don't see that going back over a site and just having a look for it, but not treating it, having to treat it with chemicals, costs more.
Can I just say?
Yeah, Rob.
Well, it could be down to the hourly rate these people charge for searching for invasive species. It's just by coincidence that the numbers are similar.
I mean, do they spray, I mean, supposing you've got Himalayan balsam, you spray it with different stuff to Japanese knotweed.
You don't need to spray the Himalayan balsam, you can just pull it.
They just pull it out.
Yeah, just pile it up. It's just the Japanese knotweed. They can spray it.
Yeah, and that one out mind in the 311.
It's just a query, because
Yeah, I think it's a good query. I don't think anyone's in principle against the idea of doing treatment, but with the annual checks, we could just presumably before you sign the check exactly what the 500 is to.
Check the check for the check.
You know, when you've got the docket or whatever, and you can notify the rest of us just for assurance because we trust you.
Shall I send an email round with the working practices on that particular item?
Just a query to the contractors, but why they...
Okay. What's turkey oak, by the way? 3.6.
It's an oak.
Just like an oak tree.
Yeah.
Okay.
Would you
Very
know
large
anything
one.
about
Turkish oak.
That's what I was going to say.
I wonder why that's an invasive species.
Well, it's not native. So, you know, like they've explained that obviously some things not necessarily harmful, but they're just, you know, a bit like Bodleian and rhododendrons being invasive.
It would be less of an issue if Quercus ruber, the native English oak, were more common elsewhere, but it isn't.
Well, it did say in this report, didn't they, that along with habitat destruction, that invasive species are the most serious threat to wildlife. It's in, I can't remember where I saw it, I think it's towards... Yeah.
Yeah, and then there's the other stuff, isn't there? The minks and the crayfish and stuff.
Yeah, that point is on 6.2. Prosecuting if animals have suffered by eating such meats.
Okay, so, I mean, apart from that, are we okay with the recommendations? Yeah, all in favour?
Yep.
Pat, you okay with that?
Are you okay with the recommendations?
Yeah, I'm
Yes.
sorry.
Yeah.
I can't hear a word you're saying, you know, none of you tonight.
Oh dear.
I'm sorry, I've got my hearing aids in, and I've got new batteries in those, and I've got this on as well, and I can't hear a word.
Shall we swap it over? Shall we swap it over?
Give it a try. We've got a hearing loop in here, have we?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to try this one.
Yes, yeah,
All right, thank you. All right, so that was unanimously approved.
Thank you.
It's on.
Oh, yes,
So is that better?
thank you.
Is that better?
Little, yes.
Okay, on to the next one, page 19, tree policy. Nothing about this.
It's a review of our tree policy, which some members may remember when it was adopted previously, back in November 2015. It was, you'll see the amendments to the policy have been italicised in bold, just to reflect the additional members of staff that have been trained. And also, members may be aware that we've invested in a tree mapping software program, to more actively monitor and to look after our stock of trees.
Okay.
Really?
Thank you. Any comments on this one? Yeah.
I think it's a very worthy report and policy, but before being minded to approve it, there are a few things I want to find out more about. Under section B, it says it's anticipated that some trees on the town council owned land could be identified and managed to become ancient trees of the future. It would be nice to know which trees are potentially ancient trees. I hate to sort of harp on about it as well, but frequently we've talked about the importance of the barland trees here. I remember one former councillor who seemed to know very little about it and thought it was terribly funny they were called barland trees, but actually the rest of us will know that they're an iconic image of Harpenden. They predate the railway being here, they predate St John's Church, for instance, and a lot of the expansion of the town. A lot of people would say that, you know, without the barland trees, if you think about it, the whole face of our town centre and the common would look substantially different. Whilst I appreciate that we've got this zoning and they are in zone 1 as high risk and therefore should get a lot more TLC year by year than the others, and I think that's great. And the annual inspection is good. I would say that town council officers doing a visual inspection, I'd rather for the risk ones that we had with arboricultural consultants for some of those risk ones, but particularly for the barland trees. But also, I think this policy, whilst it's good, it is geared towards the strictly necessary, which is health and safety. You know, so if a tree falls down, you know, we can say, well, no, we've checked that tree recently and we can't be held liable and have to claim on our public liability insurance. In other words, it's a policy geared towards, if we need to chop it down, we will. It's not geared towards, what do we do to replace it with. There could be a time when we end up with one of the barland trees hit by lightning or something, or some kind of horrible disease, and it has to be removed. 3 of them, for instance, are very, very big. If you remove one, it would substantially alter the look of them and attract great public comment, I would imagine. My point would be is that we don't want to end up in a situation whereby 7 oaks at one stage became 1 oak and almost no oaks. Not that they are oaks, but I think they're important. I'd like to see some kind of part of this policy that proactively talks about what we would do to replace trees like that. So if we had to take one down, we could say to members of the public, we're taking it down because it's unsafe, and I think most people would understand that, but we are replacing it with a mature tree, obviously not as big as that, but a mature tree. We've got this budget aside in case that needs to be done, so you know that the others will grow up and that will grow up in time. So it's a sustained site, because I think it would be a real tragedy if we allowed those trees to disappear at a vulnerable age in their life cycle simply because we weren't being diligent about it.
Any other comments? Any other comments, Patrick?
Sorry?
Were you indicating?
No, I'm sorry, no.
Okay. Okay. What can we take that on board?
Yeah, we can.
We've got
2.2.
yeah, 2.2. Says we'll take advice from professional arboricultural consultants in relation to recognising and putting in place any specific management regimes for locally important trees.
Could we have a report back on that in September?
What would you like the nature of the report to cover?
What the specific, what these trees are that could become ancient trees? I know that's a specific legal classification. Which trees on the common and in the parks have TPOs on them? I think that's important.
Anyone in the conservation area?
Okay. Are we absolutely sure about that? Because that, we talk about private land as well.
Yes. If you're in a conservation area and you want to do work on a tree, you have to apply for planning permission.
Yeah, that's correct. That's correct. There might also be
Over a certain height.
Yeah, I was going to say over a certain, I was thinking that concept, over a certain height, I get it, that was my confusion. So, I think that needs to be made clear. but I really want some focus on the barland trees, really, actually what are we going to do to be proactive, because zone 1, yes, I welcome it, it's an improvement, but it's geared towards, oh quick, the disease, chop them down, then what? It's still a tragedy. It's managing decline rather than, if you, and for instance, let's say you see that the tree has probably only got a life of, you do one of these inspections and it's just geared towards what needs to come, what doesn't. It should be geared towards, okay, well this tree's okay, but hey, it may only have 10 years life on it. What are we going to do to replace it? Managing natural heritage.
Take a look at that, Sean.
Okay.
Is the tree mapping just very basic mapping of the location of?
No, the tree mapping will include the location, it will include the species, it will go to photograph of the tree, and the trees, the system that we have using, we can import the data from our existing tree surveys, so we could then monitor the trees over a period of time. If, for example, we know a tree has got a particular issue, it might have honey fungus or something like that, that we can say, okay, well, we'll have to revisit this tree in 2 years' time and assess its condition, and then it will flag it up, rather than just us going around laboriously through paperwork and saying, oh gosh, it's 2 years, we better go and rush. We'll be going to be able to do it more proactively, which means we'll be able to profile the budget more efficiently.
Yes, but the replacement will just really be, in addition to that, almost at the end.
All I'm after is just the cherry on the icing on the cake. It's already, this isn't a criticism in any way, I think this is really good. It's what we've been asking for, and hopefully it'll make your job a lot easier.
Do we have a life assessment on all of the trees which are in this tree mapping?
I couldn't say. I wouldn't know.
It's just that might be a way of risk
Did
assessment.
you say live assessment?
Life.
Life.
Oh, live.
Life assessment. But it's just then,
That includes.
well, it's just, it might be a crude outlook, 10 years, 50 years, that sort of thing, but then it would be like a management thing. You'd know so many trees were in a bracket where the life left is 10 years, and
Very sensible suggestion.
something like that.
There might, the barland trees might have TPOs on them.
They must do.
Because they're...
TPO isn't actually enough. I mean, if it's dangerous,
Yeah, sure.
goodbye TPO.
Yeah, absolutely. But from what I recall, if something is visually prominent, it should have a TPO on it. So I would have thought they would have had that protection.
I know that the District Council are in the process of reviewing prominent trees with TPOs because they've been taking them to council.
What I'm trying to say is the TPO is great in that it stops some moron coming along with a chainsaw or somebody buying a house and doing that. But it doesn't actually stop them. It doesn't stop them. It just punishes them. But it's sort of actually the TPO is sort of for the purposes of what we're doing, which is management of them. It's almost development. So I'm assured by what they are.
Yeah.
I've dealt with them before in planning.
But they're on our land.
Yeah.
So, okay.
All they do is stop. All that does is stop us from chopping them down.
Yeah. It's not everyone else. Which we're not going to do anyway. So, okay. Right. So where does that leave us? So, are we able to approve the tree policy subject to something? Later, further report in September on managing the trees.
Yeah, I think the life, an assessment of the lifespan of them and potential replacement of prominent trees in the future.
Plus which trees are likely to become ancient trees.
Yes, perfect.
Well, that's so with those amendments, can we adopt the tree policy? Thank you very much. Okay. Next one, page 27, the water safety review. Now, from what I recall, we got Rosberg to look at particularly safety around water areas like Bafford Springs and Lydecker, plus the common ponds, etc. And then we looked at their recommendations as to what's required. And one of the dangers of not doing something about this is that if some sort of accident happens, we go along, we end up in legal action, and somebody says, well, you got a roster of assessment, you didn't do anything about it, you haven't really got a leg to stand on. So I think that's why we'll be looking at these controls and costing what was required. I think last time, if I remember correctly, the railings thing came up, didn't it? Particularly, was it the railings over that bridge as you cross Bafford Springs from Westland?
No, it's the railings at the ford.
At the ford?
Yes,
Okay.
which is not within our control.
Right.
It's a highway issue.
Okay.
I think some of it's obviously very simple. It's a case of, cross the weir at your own risk, that kind of thing. But I'd like to say that I think, the last things came up, I sort of dubious about it. I've always been sceptical of the health and safety police, but very sadly, a young man who I used to teach, in fact, from my school actually died. He and his friends had been open water swimming in one of the sort of pond-like lagoons off the River Lee in the southeast of the county. They were used to doing it quite a lot, and actually got into a spur bother and ended up dying. So, it does sort of change one's opinion on these things. We should action whatever it asks us to do within reason.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah.
On that point as well, page 29, about the high risk of the consideration should begin with moving the playground gate away from the hazardous area. And we've just put that it will be considered as part of the redevelopment.
It will be. The play area is going to be improved. There's going to be some more sort of play provision put in and what have you. So the gate will be moved.
Yeah, but I'm just thinking if that's going to be timescale 2018 as opposed to 2017 with the others, is it not an option just to actually close that gate? Because there are two gates.
We could close the gate, padlock it up, build it shut.
Rather than waiting.
That's fair enough. I mean, if there are two gates,
I mean, I know obviously you can get access with your pushchairs down the path to that gate as opposed to going around the grass. But the grass is usually kept quite short and not the lane. So I don't see why really, being that it's a high priority, if there were any issues with anything coming back about this report, in fact it's one of the high risk issues, I think. So why we just don't vote that.
Sorry, can I just have a point? I think that's a good point, because if we take the Oakley Road play area and the Grove Road, there's a gate right next to it that leads onto Grove Road, and if you went through that, you could be knocked over. So SADC they said that they would well that gate shut. So it's something similar, isn't it?
Yep.
Sorry, one other thing.
Yeah.
Right. Page 30, just the wording. I don't know if it's just where I read it. On the next to last one down, high risk, where banks or structures alongside the or above water. And now I'm reading it differently anyway. Ensure that there is a safe working method that recognises the risk created in this environment. Just I read it as words.
Probably.
Now reading it.
Or delete that.
Yeah, because even if you read where banks or structures alongside the water, ensure that they're. Or should it be where?
Let me just find the original. Where banks and structures alongside or above water, ensure there is a safe working method that recognises the risk created in this environment. What it should be.
Sorry,
a bit typo.
Delete that.
Where banks or structures alongside or above water, comma, ensure that there is a safe working method that recognises the risk created.
Sorry, it doesn't
environment.
too much to confuse me.
That's the original.
Any other comments on
It hasn't been
Not-
totaled up, Chair, because we
not
are still
this
waiting
season,
for
no.
some costs.
Yeah.
Sorry, does that come out of repairs and maintenance budget?
It'll come out of a variety of budgets, obviously there's a budget for backflows. We'll be liaising with the rights of way officers at county council to see if they have some funding, because obviously some of it is the rights of way public footpath.
Okay.
But yes, and we do have quite healthy reserves in order to make sure that this is all undertaken.
Sorry, can I just raise a point?
Yeah, please.
When we did the Marquee Lane Larks in the Park just recently, and we had the duck race, somebody drove a Defender through the water.
We heard about that, I think. Yeah, carry on.
Yeah, sorry,
we have
it was
heard
just
about that, but can't
so,
just say all the numbers.
I realise it's just extra work, but it's like the road should have been closed off, or I don't know how.
It's been pointed out to the St Albans District Council, who were the organisers of the event.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
She said she didn't see the 4x4, but she saw the horses and everything.
That's not good. Okay. Okay, so with that type of change, are we okay with the recommendations 2.1.1 and 2.3? Okay. Thank you very much. That's unanimous. Budgetary control. Next item, page 33. Any comments on this? Basically, the first 3 months, isn't it? April, May, June, just the first quarter. Do we? Okay, and we're profiling the budget, so certain things occur in certain months, so it's not just a quarter of the total, etc.
Yeah, we may have more new contract bills coming in the first quarter than even though they might be spread over the year, the costs, that's why sometimes you get a little bit of a variance and what have you.
Yeah, and there will be cutting the grass during the winter and all that sort of stuff. So, yeah, just for my benefit, what are the recharge items under income?
I don't know, Chair, but I can find out and I will email you.
Okay, I know it's come up before, I just don't remember what they are. I know they're relatively small amounts, but just for interest. I suppose they might, normally in social housing, recharges are repairs which are charged to tenants, so it might be something like that.
Yes, it could be, or it could be something that we, like for example, the service level agreement we have with the History Society. We charge them for the use of facilities, but, we give them a grant, but then the grant gets used to pay for the use of facilities, basically. But I'll get it clarified.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments on that? Or can we just note that? All in favour? Okay. Thank you very much. Right, now move on to the exempt business.
A point of order before we move out to part one, if that's okay, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
On the exempt business, not discussing the content themselves, I understand that obviously exempt items that include contractual discussions or approvals would have to be in part 2 until such a time as this committee approves them. However, I would like to ask, unless I've been a bit of a doofus and missed it, commercial use of the concourse, the storage depot and the air raid shelters don't include these, so I wondered why they were in part 2.
Just have a look at the commercial use of the concourse. Well, I suppose the rates that we're charging.
We've discussed charging rates for things like fares, ice cream concessions and things like that before. That's always been in the open.
I know that the air raid shelters, because of the nature of the report, that's why that's in part 2.
What about its nature means it has to be part 2?
Because we're talking about commercial items, about going out to contract.
Pre-contract stuff shouldn't be in part 2. During a tender process it should be, but if you're talking about pre-tender, my experience of this place and the district council is that it shouldn't be in part 2. There's a lot of stuff in there that isn't part 2. I don't mean to be awkward, but I just think that in the age of private eyes, rotten borough things, I think everything we do, I think the tender is part 2, but I don't think a lot of that stuff's appropriate for it.
All right, well, we'll make inquiries about that.
Can I just raise a point on that?
Yeah, go on.
I think there are detailed quotations in here, and I think some vendors are very sensitive to other people seeing their detailed
I understand that, but actually most of the reports in the air raid shelters doesn't concern that. Very clear. Because it's perfectly possible, for instance, as you're aware, Mr. Chairman, the Cabinet and the District Council deals with part 2 stuff pretty much every time it meets, and it will have the sort of meat and potatoes, so to speak, of the report in part 1, and it will have contractual details and tendering details in part 2 for the benefit of members to see.
Yeah, that's true. All right, we'll look into that. I don't know whether I can take them out of part 2 and whether it matters for this evening.
Well, I think it's actually for members to agree to go into part 2. Rather than the other way around, isn't it?
I think that by courtesy that's always delegated to the chairman, and I wouldn't want to change that. And I think officers make a judgment. It's just there are items with the concourse and the air raid shelters that I don't think come under part 2. Certainly not with the concourse. I think that's definitely a part 1.
Yeah, I was surprised that that item was in part 2. I didn't see anything here that we had to only put it in part 2 expense items.
Just raise a point. Just that there are business sort of expectations here in respect to the concourse that I would have thought would be in part 2.
And why do you think they would be in part 2?
Because they're related to commercial activities.
Commercial activities are covered in part 2 if you're dealing with specifically commercial stuff that's commercially sensitive to a tender or you have a closed tender competition happening. So if you've simply gone out to a single tender justification, it doesn't necessarily meet that unless it's a niche area. And when it's discussing the concourse and the air raid shelters, it's perfectly possible to split up most of that if councils feel that they that someone would be hard done by otherwise. May I suggest, Mr. Chairman, because I really don't mean to be a pain, that actually the commercial use of the concourse and the air raid shelters are deferred, if necessary, to a special committee. Because
Well, what we're going to do is, Mr. Cheevers, our town clerk, is next door. So what we're going to do is to ask his view on this.
with respect,
The concourse paper is, the timing of it is quite, it's about what's happening in the next couple of months, so it'd be tricky to put that off. I mean, the air raid shelter could wait, but I think the concourse we need to do this tonight.
I actually think, Mr. Chair, that the air raid shelters are quite urgent, actually, when we read the report there. Yeah. So I would have thought that my proposal is that we leave it as it is and go through it, and then for future meetings review.
well, I think that's entirely wrong, actually, Councillor. I mean, no offence, but I think that goes against the spirit of what Councillor Gilliam and I are trying to say about that. But actually, when you're discussing the expenditure of public money, there is a difference between discussing the policy and principle of spending and who you're actually spending it with, which should probably be part 2. I think what you're suggesting is almost that we can budget this time and get it right in the future.
No. For instance, on the concourse, it's not spending public money, it's gaining
It's
public money.
discussing what to do with the public money.
Can I plonk myself down?
Carl, you might be able to assist us here.
Yeah.
The question has arisen as to why 8.3, 8.4 and 8.5 are in part 2 of part 1.
Yep. So they're all for commercial reasons. So the first one, 8.3, this sets out the what the traders are paying us to trade on the concourse.
Why is that any different from, say, discussing concessions to fairgrounds, ice cream sellers, or what people pay at the farmers market?
Because at the moment we don't have a permanent approach to trading on the concourse. So the report sets out in September, the Corporate Policy and Finance Committee are going to be looking at that, which will look at partly around what the set fees should be, if there should be set fees, or what the range of costs should be. So putting that into the...
If they're looking at that in the Finance Committee, will that be in part 2 or in part 1?
So that will be in part 2, because it will look
the
at
whole process would be in part 2.
Because it will be part of a wider commercial report.
Mr. Chairman, it's incredibly embarrassing, but it's totally unsatisfactory to me.
Sorry, can I ask, Carl, isn't the amounts that companies pay the Town Council in our transparency documents anyway on our website? Doesn't it list who pays the council?
Yes, it would be for our transactions.
Yeah, so that will be listed anyway, what they'll be paying us for the concourse. So if it's in our transparency documents anyway, why would we want to?
So the overall income figure will be listed. It won't be individual to the certain traders, and you won't be able to identify how much they pay per hour to do that, because we don't have an agreed approach on that at the moment.
I was going to comment on the concourse if we had a discussion. My comments were really sort of aimed at, I like the whole idea, but why wouldn't we have always debate about who should be another vendor on the concourse? Because this will be fairly new. I mean, you've got pudding stock there at the moment, but if we put another one on, the public will think, oh, well, that's nice.
Can I just check that are you off at the moment?
Yeah.
Okay, so Chair, before you get into a detailed discussion about it, you might want to decide whether you do want to go into part 2 for that discussion.
I think Councillor Gillard and I are coming from exactly the same place here. We're not trying to throw a spoke in anyone's works, we're just saying that we understand why bits of this have to be in part 2. I don't understand why we're not following what I've understood to be local government best practice of having the principles behind it discussed in part 1. So there is a clear debate that's minuted that people can watch on our webcast, and then discuss the actual money and figures and contractors in part 2, which surely seems perfectly reasonable. I understand that might be difficult to carve up the report at this stage, but not doing that is something I feel very uncomfortable with.
Yeah, just recalling from previous items that have come up, for instance, about fitness camps on the park. I'm sure they've been in open.
Yeah, they have. They always have.
And we've always listed how much we've been paid, which companies have approached us. There's been an issue with that.
And debated the principle of doing it, yeah.
So, Chair, on that, based on what Councillor Chisholm-Miles is suggesting, I mean, we're happy to do the concourse on that basis. If you want to look at the principles and then take the financials separate, then that would be fine for that one. I think the other two, I think there are also legitimate reasons for them to be in part 2. I can't speak whilst we're on as to why I think the storage depot needs to be part 2, but the air raid shelters, again, we are talking about the potential financial spend of the Town Council ahead of gaining any quotes from potential contractors. So it would be unwise to put that figure out there before asking them to quote on it.
I'm happy to accept
I think I'd agree with that.
what Mr. Cheever says about the storage depot, but looking at the concourse item, I would say it's 3.4, 3.5, 3.8, 3.9 and 4 onwards that are properly Part 2, and with the air raid shelters I would have said that it is actually only items 4 onwards which should be in Part 2. There's nothing I can see that would prejudice that discussion. In the first part of the report, there's no mention of any particular contractor, where it talks about funds, it's the town council's funds, which is a matter of public record anyway. If that helps.
Well, in terms of the commercial use of the concourse, and that's about half the report, isn't it? Can you give us the numbers again, the paragraph numbers
I've
again?
circled the paragraphs which mention stick businesses and figures. They are 3.4,
Yeah.
3.5, 3.8
Yeah.
and 3.9, and then obviously
All full.
all.
Well, I suppose what we could do, to move this along, is to discuss now, in part 1, everything which we don't think should be in part 2.
Very reasonable.
And then we can go into part 2 somewhat academic, if we don't have any members of the public present. We can talk about financial implications, like.
Of course.
Yeah. So, let's do that then, shall we?
Can I have a resolution, Chair, to move it up this item up the agenda, please?
Yeah. Can we? Shall we take things in order? Are we okay with 8.1, 8.2 being on part 2?
Yeah, that's fine.
Right. So in that case, what would we do?
And 8.4.
Yeah, excellent. I'm just thinking what's the simplest way to deal with this evening. Shall we stay in part 1 and then move into part 2 for the rest of it?
Yeah, I would suggest, yeah, that's sensible, yeah.
That's the neatest.
Remaining part 1, take the commercial use of the concourse, the points that, the paragraphs that you consider can stay in that bit.
Yeah.
At the point in which you want to then move to part 2, you can move the meeting to that.
Yeah. Okay. And so we need a resolution to read to
If you're going to...
change the order. Okay. So can we agree that we're going to change the order? So as I discussed earlier. Yes. Everybody okay with that? Okay. Thank you. Right. So let's take a look. Commercial use of the concourse first. The points which, let's discuss the general non-financial points of this, or non-commercial points. So anybody got any comments?
Yeah, I wanted to make some comments on that. I very much like the idea of using the concourse commercially in this way, with vendors there. Working hospitality when I was younger, and I'm sure we've all noticed the growing popularity of street food in this country, particularly amongst younger people as well. I'm very encouraged that we are finally looking at getting some street food vendors in Harpenden, and I feel that this would be very good for Harpenden to have not just the current business we've got there at the moment, but one or two more. I was just really raising an item of concern was that had we spoken to other businesses, for instance, rather than just the one we've highlighted, at the Food and Drink Festival a couple of years ago, a couple of the stalls there came from down the road in Luton, and I think another one from Hertfordshire as well. So there are people out there that we could get into Harpenden with very delicious food that will, I'm sure, be taken up by the members of the public. So I'm just really wondering if we have spoken to other people as opposed to just agreeing on one. And because, as I said, I think there are a plethora really diverse food vendors that we could approach, or will approach us, I think, actually.
Yes, I think we were approached, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. Do you want a drink, Pat? Are you okay?
You're okay, Pat? Are you okay?
So yeah, so we were approached in the same way that we were approached by the pudding shop originally, actually. So the reason why we are suggesting to go ahead with this second vendor is because we see it as an opportunity to further test the use of the concourse by having two people trade on there at one point. We could, of course, go out to wider to the market and create a whole host of demand for this, for the pilot, but I think the expectations and how we would manage that would be pretty difficult, I would imagine. The plan would be, when we go to committee in September, when we look at the longer term, i.e. from January onwards, that will involve going out, an application process, no doubt, to invite people in to come and be part of that new opportunity. The reason why we are, say, the additional trader, we're just treating it as an opportunity because they come forward at a good time for us, and that's why we're suggesting just exploring it with them. And it really helps us to try and test how good a commercial opportunity the concourse is.
From what I recall, these people are looking at the potential of starting a business in Harpenden and want to use their experience on the concourse as like test marketing.
Yep.
I think that's correct.
That's correct, Chair. And I think part of the attraction with them is that they are a local business, if you like. So they live in Harpenden. They have previous experience of trading in Harpenden, and to be completely honest, they have a similar vehicle to the pudding stock. So from an image perspective, it was quite attractive that actually it would look the same on the concourse at that point. So it was never a decision that we foresaw that we were going to go and try and attract a second. It's just because they've come to us, we decided actually that this could be a good opportunity. We shouldn't pass out in this extension to test the commercial use even more.
Yep.
The principle of this, like Councillor Gillen, I do completely agree with. It's good. I think it enhances the vibrancy of the town centre, which is a really good thing. And I like the way we're looking to give preferences to local businesses. I think that's really important. This town council supported the Keep It Local campaign, and that's sort of felt fall by the wayside there. And it's important, I think, that we do what we can practically, not just with words. What I am concerned about is that obviously we would draw up appropriate licences of our own. I assume would be legally defensible because it's our land. But what measures would we take to prevent, for instance, because obviously that will make it a busier place rather than a dead space, which is great. You do sometimes get organisations, maybe even political parties, who like to hang around in the concourse. What measures would we take to prevent, say, chuggers from putting up a camp there and harassing people? Sometimes you find people in St Albans. The other day, someone actively followed me down the street trying to tell me why I was about to get in a load of debt, my credit rating or something, which was amusing at the time. I was in quite good mood, but I want to see some kind of licensing enforcement as well as just a scheme of delegation.
Okay.
Can I raise a point? My understanding is that charity collections, which are quite popular on the concourse, will still be able to proceed with these commercial things. It's just if it was to extend greatly the commercial side, maybe there wouldn't be enough room for the charity collection, so that would be my only concern.
I think that's covered in 3.2, but can't.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I mean, it's want to be really, really clear that there will be no impact negatively on the voluntary and community groups that use the concourse. This would have to work in tandem with them. you know, we'll properly map out the space in terms of the future use when we agree what our future plans are, so there won't be any impact on the voluntary community sector. In terms of the Councillor Chichester-Miles' point around kind of enforcement, I think we kind of do that at the moment informally. So if we hear or see anything going on, you know, I'm often out there, Emma's often out there asking people to move on. So I think we would continue as we would do at the moment there. And actually, in many respects, having more traders and more people that we're working with on the area actually helps to enforce and police and manage the area as well, and actually put it to good use, I think.
Yeah, and I think with the charities anyway, I think they're there irregularly as opposed to regularly. I mean, I think they're not there every weekend. They're probably once every month, maybe, if not a couple of months. You've got one out there, and you're right about the sort of casual enforcement. I remember Emma going over to tell some people during the referendum campaign last year to move on because political activities weren't allowed on there. So I mean, I like the idea that we're basically just getting someone in who's agreed to continue the pilot, and that more sort of thought will be discussed on this in September for the longer term. So that to be honest, clears things up in my mind, and I'm happy with that.
Yep, done.
I'm also very happy, could we just make sure in 3.3 that we include the views of local retailers who are not necessarily street retailers but people in shops? I'm just thinking if I ran a bakery or a coffee shop, maybe I'd want to say adverse or not. But I don't want to sort of put us in a situation as we've had in the past where sometimes local retailers have said the town council is being a hindrance or a difficulty to them. I think we should cover ourselves by making sure we consult with people in September.
Yes, certainly part of the idea of extending the pilot is to be able to properly test and get the feedback from local businesses as well. So we've been doing that already. We've been doing it with local communities and residents, and we've gathered quite a lot of information through the pudding stuff already. But I think the idea is definitely to continue to test that. This really is a 12 months of testing, not just whether it's commercially viable, but whether people find it acceptable. So that's the benefit of giving it another 6 months, extending it over the summer, a different period for the town centre, to really get us in a good place to see whether it's something we want to do long term.
Can I just ask, have you had any negative feedback at all from either the community or any other retailers? No, not really. Nothing that's really reached me. I mean, we had one query which related to the current ice cream contract that we have, because the pudding stop at one point started to serve some soft ice cream with their brownies or whatever it was, and so whilst there's nothing stopping them doing that, we worked with the ice cream contractor to basically ask them to stop doing it, the pudding stop. So there's been one or two small things like that, but generally it's been the comments that we received back. The negatives are, why aren't they there 4 days a week, 5 days a week? Why isn't there other types of street food available? So I'm not saying there isn't the negative views out there, but we haven't had any sort of big issues at all. No.
I think it will be very good for the town. You'll get more footfall, you'll get more people spending money. Consumer habits have changed to a degree in that people are now eating street food more, particularly youngsters. And I just generally think this is something that we can go forward with long term.
Okay. All right, so we've finished our part one discussion. So let's move on to the other part ones that we've considered here.
Should we agree the recommendation?
We could do. I was going to do that in part two, but.
So Chair, I mean, it depends if you and the committee think that you need to consider the financial things in order to agree the recommendations, really. I think if the committee and yourself felt like you do need to discuss the finances before agreeing the recommendations, then I think now would be a good time to move into part two.
Okay. What the members think?
I'm happy as it is.
I'm happy as it is.
Okay, the majority is happy. So, okay, in that case, let's go to the recommendations. Are we okay to recommend, accept the recommendations 2.1, 2.4, 1.2, 2.1.3.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. It's unanimous. Okay. Right, what have we got to? Any more part one things that we can consider in here?
The area shelters.
The area shelters. Okay. So whilst we're not going to refer to the financial stuff particularly, because I think Carl's correct, is that, you know, if you, in commercial terms, if you see somebody's got a budget for X thousand, you're likely to bid X thousand, basically. So I think we ought to keep that confidential. But let's debate the principles behind the report and the actions proposed, rather than the financial stuff. So, yeah, Carl.
Yeah, Chair, if I could I just give a really brief intro? I mean, I'm not going to say anything different at all here, but it's really, really brief in terms of how we got to today.
Yeah.
So I appreciate, in my time here, and actually before my time, there's been lots of discussions around air raid shelters. But how we came to this report today is that we were approached by the retained fire service, who wanted to do, having had an issue around someone getting stuck in a manhole cover, they wanted to use the air raid shelters as a training opportunity. At the time, I felt like actually I would be happy to potentially support that, but we noted that the last full survey was back in 2013, so I felt like I couldn't agree for the fire service to use it without there being an up-to-date survey. So we commissioned the survey, which is obviously part of your papers today, and as a result of that, some of the recommendations and the considerations that came back from that survey, as you would imagine, has led me to say to the fire service that they can't use it, but more importantly, there is some urgent things that the committee and the council need to consider. So that's how we've got to this report today, and the recommendations off the back of that original request from the fire service to use them.
Yep. Thank you, Carl. Any comments from anybody else? Dan?
It's good to have that extra information from the town clerk on why we turned down the return fire service. On the face of it, that seems like a sensible use for them, and there are after all people who can look after themselves, but I understand this. I think they've got to this situation because they've been allowed to drift into that situation. I think, we've got a gap of 3 years, in fact, almost, between 3.4 and 3.6, where in 2013 the Environment Committee unanimously said they wanted them to be done, to be explored. Lots of people who saw what was going on, passers-by, were very enthusiastic, and I don't think, I think it sort of drifted into the long grass then, and I think that's been allowed to happen mainly because some of those members of the Environment Committee are no longer here on the council. So it's disappointing that it took until September 2016 to actually get any feedback to a consultation on that. But the feedback is what it is. I just want to make the observation that I think that was a case of allowing things to grind along slowly has allowed it to sort of get to this stage where we may well have to spend some money, but for no benefit whatsoever other than just covering our backs. The other observation I'd like to make is that obviously this is a problem because of what I believe is known in the trade as popped concrete. The iron reinforcements have somehow allowed moisture in, and that has gradually pushed out and deteriorated the surrounding concrete ribbing. What kind of filling are we talking about, and what kind of sort of impact is this going to have? Because it would be interesting to know the different options we have, from sort of your permanent things like that. I mean, in the past, Councillor Wakely was in this council talked about foam concrete and things like that. I understand that whilst that's very solid, it's hugely unsafe and all the rest of it. And I think we need to explain quite clearly to people, because there will be people who were very enthusiastic. We'll need to explain quite, with the content of this report, frankly, what we're doing, and that the situation has changed dramatically from 2013. People do, or certainly used to go down there from time to time, and we can say, well, this is actually no one should, not even the fire brigade. The other point I'd just like to make is it would be nice to have some kind of, I know the Harpenden History Society will have a record of that, But the whole principle behind the 2013 decision was that it's a part of our heritage that actually, it may not seem particularly fashionable, but the idea that we lived in a world war where every town had to have these facilities is one that's dying in our communities. People forget the reality of living in a warlike situation like that. Maybe we are at war, but it's a very different kind of warfare that we're in today. It would be nice to have some kind of, just like where we've got the sensory garden, something on an interpretation board somewhere that said, you know, this was the site of an air raid shelter, there are other air raid shelters here, you know, and maybe a photo, if it could be found, of what they look like before they're filled in, or if we can even find them, something on an interpretation board in the future, not immediately, just in the future, that shows maybe what they look like when they were in use. Because actually, that was quite startling going down there, realising that actually being stuck down in one of those things with lots of people, you know, we've got the mention of a lavatory partition, things like that, would have been surreal to say the least. And I think it's important to have that kind of, it's not glamorous history, but I think it's important to preserve it, at least in some way.
Okay, just taking your first point, if I could refer you to page 58 under section 5, third paragraph of section 5, that's what's proposed.
Okay. Selected material, I'm assuming being earth.
I guess so.
And
No, necessarily. Be just non-hazardous, could be anything.
probably be better if it's given where it is.
Well, it's saying that acid topsoil and turf can then be added. So, I mean, soil is...
So that's
Not how it's specified.
That's it. I mean, it will just be something that's non-hazardous. You can't take...
I'm just wondering, my understanding is that the foam concrete, as it's called in business, is very expensive.
I think it's what we use to fill the sinkhole in St Albans, in Fort Malclose, I believe. I'm not absolutely sure about that.
We would obviously have to notify residents there, because you've got businesses and residents very, very close by.
Yeah.
When you look at the Bowers parade site. But with that there, I think it's just my comments on heritage. I think there should be some photos taken before they're filled in.
Yeah.
And it would be nice in future years to put something on board.
What were you?
Yeah, I was just going to second Dan's suggestion about some photos, or photos first of what they look like now, and then an interactive board or something near to where they are, just to say site of air raid shelters, what it's like, these are the photos. I think that would be a good addition to the town, preserve a little bit of heritage there. So completely agree with that.
I think that is a good idea. It may be that photos already exist. I mean, they've taken photos of the damaged areas, but could be insufficient photographs there.
I think I have some on my phone somewhere, actually.
Yes, thank you. I'd just like to say I think it's a real shame actually that it's come to this. I for one would have been all for having a working air raid shelter in Harpenden. I think it would have been a fantastic attraction for visitors, for educational purposes. And not as fair as this might sound, I think you can almost get a consultation to give you any answer you really want to come up with. And I think I'm pretty certain that there wasn't a real desire amongst councillors at the time to run with this. So I think it's very sad indeed that come 2 years down the line just filling them in. But with a bit of a heavy heart, obviously I agreed to fill them in, but I think it's a shame.
Okay. Any other comments? Right. So we're still in Farm 1. We need to look at the storage depot. Is that the final item in Farm 1?
No,
That's part 2. Exclusively, okay. Right.